sorry, I logged on late. I have no idea what was going on right now.
Oh, no worries at all. Did you have any specific questions, or did you just want to pop in and say hi?
A little bit of both, but I'll let whoever was already going, and then I'll catch in at the end.
I think that so far we've caught up with everybody. I was actually just about to log off if nobody else had any questions, so I'm glad you logged in.
Okay, I just had, I guess, quick things. Like, what did you recommend as resources for certain topics, like biostats and the ethics and stuff? I know you sent like a link for a YouTube page for the ethics stuff.
Yeah, good question. So for biostats, if you go into the step 1 Discord and then swipe over to the right and then click on pins at the top, it's going to have a pinned message with all my step-by-step for biostats of what you need to do. There's about, let's say, 7 videos that you need to see. And then also there's if you click on the message specifically, it's going to pull up a PDF that I wrote with high-yield stuff that I didn't see in any question banks anywhere, but is still testable for biostats. That's exactly what I would do for your biostats. So click on the step 1 channel, click on pins, and then scroll down and then click on the message that says biostats.
Okay. And then I know we've talked about it before, like hematology being something that I feel like I get, but somehow score just don't correlate that.
Sure.
When it comes to like the pathology and pathoma, like I can honestly probably recite the pathoma videos in my sleep now because I've just watched them so much.
Yeah.
But it's never what I guess the questions are coming at. They're always coming from like an oncology perspective, and I don't know where I'm getting lost in them, I guess, when the questions come up. So I guess pathoma's clearly not cutting it. So what other resources for that one would you suggest?
Good question. So there's 2 that I'm a big fan of. One's obvious because I wrote it. We have some really solid red blood cell disorder videos that breaks everything down on the members area underneath the video lectures. But if you're looking for, and we also have some white blood cell disorder stuff, but if you're looking for something additional on top of that, a lot of students have had some luck with sketchy path for the red blood cell and white blood cell disorders, mainly because those are very memorization heavy. And I don't generally recommend sketchy path like carte blanche across the board. It's just too long. There's not a lot of applicability between some of the videos and question banks, etc. But for the heme-onc stuff, it can actually be very useful if you're getting some of those nuanced points messed up in your head. Like if you can't remember like CD34, you can remember in the video, oh, there's a guy with 3-4 on his chest. Like, you know what I mean? Like it'll be really helpful for the actual memorization aspect. Other than that, after you've already went through those and you feel that you still are a little bit shaky, you can supplement with a second question bank as well. Like it's totally kosher to take your UWorld questions and then supplement those with either RX or AMBOSS on top for specific systems. I wouldn't obviously just like randomly go through and just do every single question in the other bank right now when you need to be locking in on UWorld and vice versa. But if there are certain systems that you really struggle on, you can see different styles of being asked the question, if that makes sense. Like if you're looking at a max rent hammer question in AMBOSS, you're going to be like, this is freaking impossible. Like it's super freaking difficult, but it can show you just another angle that you can be asked those concepts.
Okay. I'll have to check them out. I think I messaged you about this before, that plateau. I just like I do all of my Q banks on random. Like it will be the weirdest topics, and a lot of them I don't honestly know. I'm taking educated guesses on.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's like no matter what I'm doing, I cannot hit past that 65%. And it's like honestly starting to get annoying because it's just like you see the same score over and over and over again. And it's like I'm reviewing my questions after I miss them. So it's like I feel like I should be doing better as they come up. But
let me draw something out for you here. Oh man, my pen is dead. Let me see if it'll work with my finger. All right, this might not be very good because my Apple Pencil's dead. But essentially, when you're doing your UWorld, if you break it up into here's your first pass, here's your second pass, and then here's your third pass. Your score, let's say, I'm just going to give broad ranges here. There's no set in stone or anything, obviously. Let's say here's 40, here's 60, here's 80, and here's 100. And this is by no means set in stone, and I'm not saying that you can't have variance from this, but your whole first pass, you honestly might cap out 60, 65 range. The second pass, you start seeing an upshoot because now you're starting to see all that stuff again that you have essentially either has met the flagging protocol, meaning that it's something that you need to see again based upon what we discussed on the onboarding for flagging, or it's something that you missed, right? So at that point, the whole second pass, you're going to see more of a jump up in your score oftentimes than you will in your first pass. Because the first pass, you might not see that same concept for another like 1,500 questions, right? So even though you reviewed it, You might even forget it by the next time you get that question. And so that's totally normal and expected. Very few people get consistently into the 70s on their first pass. Sure. Is it possible? Sure. Is that the par for course? A lot of people know, but on the second pass, absolutely, right? The second pass, you can start bumping it up into even the 80s range. And then on the third pass, it's kind of the same thing again. Towards the end, it forms another sigmoidal curve. So you're going to be pushing up into that 85 to 95% range. So really, like, you might just be plateaued on your first pass right here at that 50 to 60% range and never even break through it until you finish the whole Q bank. And that's totally okay. You have to just keep grinding and get through it, honestly. Like, it sucks. Sure, you want to see the scores, but the scores don't matter at all, honestly. Like, the whole point is learning.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, but honestly, I think it's just ASCOM. But Midwestern's dean is just kind of annoying. Like, when it came to the CompState, he's like, you need to hit the benchmark, otherwise you can't sit for your exam. And then he's like, we're looking at your Q bank percentages, and if you're not hitting this, you're not going to get to sit. And I'm just like, I feel like you have these like benchmarks you want us to hit, but they're kind of unrealistic, because he's like, I want you to hit 70 to 75 on all of your question blocks. And I was like, well, I can't pass 65, so clearly I'm not going to hit that one.
Yeah, that's hyper unrealistic for first pass of a question bank. The only time that people hit breaking through 75 on the first pass is if they waited too long to do their pass and they did like months and months of content before they dove into it. If you're looking for the fastest trajectory increase of your performance, you can't wait that long for your questions, obviously, because let's say you did from now till December, you just did content. Sure, you're going to be at 70, 75% when you do your questions, but it's too long. Like, it's too late from now. You know what I mean? So I'd much rather have my students crash and burn into their questions and be frustrated with their scores and performance, but you already are into the questions, right? Like, that's the advantage of starting early and working hard on them. I wouldn't let what your dean's saying about 70, 75% rattle you. I mean, just keep your head down. The score percentages are going to jump up and you'll get there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to meet his little requirements so he can be like, okay, you can go sit now. Because I don't want to have to pay to move my exam when I'm like, I think I will be okay based on how I'm doing. It's like, you just have some really unrealistic, like, if you're expecting all of your students to score between a 450 to 500 on CompState, you're pretty much expecting all of your students to be in the 70 to 80% range before we even run dedicated. Like, it doesn't make sense.
No. I mean, and think about it this way, like, obviously, the reason why schools want that is because they don't care how much it sucks for you to try to hit that goal. They want everybody to pass, so that their percentage pass is going to be like 95%, but that's not realistic for the majority of schools. I mean, some schools, even now with step one going pass fail, their percentages have even dropped, actually, the amount of students that pass. It went from, like, let's say a 90% to like an 85% at some schools, and sometimes even more substantial of a percentage change than that. So I think that they're saying that with your best interest in mind, but obviously that's the reasoning behind it, is they just want to make sure that you actually pass, which I totally get it. By the time you take your test, you want to be scoring at least 70. That's totally reasonable. If you're averaging 60 going into the test, can you pass? Possibly. Do I recommend taking it? No. So from that end, I do agree. But saying that on your first pass through, you have to be at 70%, that's tough. Some people will get there, some people will not.
But he's also like, I remember I put it in the Discord and you were like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. He's also the person who's like, don't reuse any of your questions. You've seen it, so it's useless. And I was like, wait, what?
That makes no sense, because if you got 4,000 data points, I don't know a single person on planet Earth that can remember A through E of 4,000 different data points. I personally don't have that good of a memory, so I got to see stuff more than once.
Honestly. And then the last question was about Anki. So like, during school, I was never really someone who got into it, because it was just never something I could like fit into the schedule. Sure. I'm trying now, but I've noticed that there's just way more cards than I would possibly ever get to within now till like the first week of June. So like, how do you recommend going through that? Because I know there's stuff in Anki that's pretty high yield that you don't really see in other places.
So I have a kind of a bittersweet relationship with Anki. There's definitely a time and a place for it, and there's definitely a time and a place not for it. Okay. From my perspective, using Anki before you've mastered UWorld, or at least quote unquote mastered it, meaning that you're now scoring 70-80% range, it almost gives you less of a benefit with your UWorld, because you might be getting questions right simply because you saw a flashcard on that question, which actually hurts your learning process. Because now, instead of missing something that you should have missed because you actually just didn't know that concept, Now you get a question right based upon, oh, I remember that flashcard that had these 3 bold words that are the same words that this question uses. So now it like completely defeats the whole actually learning objective of UWorld, because it hurts a lot more to miss a question than it does to just see a flashcard again, right? And so your amount retention is going to decrease in that regard. I'm a big fan of using Anki to speed read through everything after you're done with your UWorld. So that was one of the things that I felt was really beneficial, is I actually used it as like a final pass through of my content. I didn't use it so much for step 1. I used it more for step 2, which we can talk about that when you get to that point. But I essentially used it to make sure I saw every single concept within a week of the exam again. And so that was highly beneficial for me. For step 1, I didn't rely on it as heavily. You can certainly use it for things that you're having trouble internalizing into your long-term memory. I think using it completely without disregard for anything and just saying I'm going to do the whole bank is not very beneficial, especially if you haven't been using it the whole time. Like trying to incorporate it right now and do 20,000 cards or however many cards are in your bank is just very unrealistic. But if you want to use it for the Heme that you're struggling with, it might actually help you a ton. So if you can spot target right now what you want to actually use it for, it may be beneficial. But if you just put on biochem, anatomy, cardio, respiratory, I mean, it's going to be so much that you spend half your day doing Anki and you never actually even get to your questions. So the only time that I would recommend using it is if it's something that you really suck at, that you want to hone in on, and you've already done your questions for the day.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's where I messed up, is I pretty much opened like all of the videos for Pathoma since I finished those videos, and then all of Sketchy Micro, all of Sketchy Farm, and then I opened it and I was like 3,000 cards for today, and I was like, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. So I'll just do it for, I guess, topics that are kind of weaker and try to incorporate it earlier on for the next part. Okay. That's, I think, all the questions I had.
Awesome. Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Actually, speaking about
for you guys.
Speaking about UWorld, I saw your tweet about starting it as early as possible. And I've recently started preparing for my step 1. I'm very I feel scared to start UWorld because I feel like I want to do some months or some few weeks of content to feel comfortable with the step 1 and all of it. So do you think I should start it right now, or I do some few weeks of content and then I start it?
It's going to depend on what your baseline is, man. Oops, sorry. If your baseline is very solid right now, then you might not need it. But if your baseline is shaky, and that would just depend on kind of how you score across your first 5 blocks of UWorld, then that would tell you that we need to spend some time on content. So what I like to use as a cutoff in my mind is if you're below 55% average on your first 5 blocks of UWorld, it would be beneficial to allocate some time to content before diving in on 99% focus into UWorld. But if you're scoring, let's say 50 to 60% range, then your time is better off diving into the questions because you have at least a decent enough basis that you're not guessing so much. So that's really going to depend on your own performance on your first few blocks. Because let's say you take your first few blocks and you're at 30%, obviously you need to do a little bit of content to ramp up the speed.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Speaking on the blocks, okay, so let's say more or less May. So if you have a month out from your exam, how many questions per day would you be suggesting we're doing about right now?
How many have you done total?
Well, I finished USMLE RX. I was doing that while I was learning last year. And then I've done about 800 on TrueLearn and maybe 1,000 of UWorld. So I still have a good amount to go.
So kind of my general mental framework is that you have 30 to 45 days out from your exam. You're done with your first pass of UWorld if you hadn't done USMLE RX in the past. The fact that you've already done that, let me do some math here. So how many questions do you have left?
930 something, I think.
Okay. I mean, you're going to want to be minimum doing 3 blocks right now, because if you think about it, if you're doing 2,900 questions and you're doing 120 a day, that's going to take you pretty much right up to your exam. That's 24 days from now. And I like people to have time, obviously, for that second run through. It's very, very difficult to ask you to do a lot more than 120 questions on your first run through, just realistically speaking. I mean, you've also done TrueLearn on top of that. So you have at least a little better basis than somebody that's going into this without having done that. But like I said, really, I like you to have some time to get through that second run through of the flags, because that's where you actually will see the biggest jumps. You might honestly go from a 65 to an 85% on your next run through, because it's just that dramatic of an improvement. So how many are you doing a day right now?
About 60 to 80.
Okay, let's ramp it up by 5 each day until you're maxed out. Like if you can only do 110 a day, then we'll know. But like let's see, just every day for this week, Monday through Friday, ramp it up by 5 more and see how many that you can get yourself up to without it like capsizing your whole day.
I mean, getting them done isn't the problem. It's just depending on how many I got wrong and how much review is built into
For
it.
sure. You're definitely accurate with that.
Would it be beneficial then to like mix the flagged questions with unused questions within a block? That way I start getting those second pass? No. Okay.
I wouldn't, no, because at the end of the day, you have to see everything, obviously, and you're going to be able to move through your flags a lot quicker. Like if we can even get like 10, 15 days to go through flags, I mean, you might be able to get through all of them in that time period, just because you can go through like 4 or 5 blocks in a day if you really want to like sit down and grind that hard. You can do that on your second run through because you set it up correctly the first time.
Mhm.
Like right now, it might feel like it takes you an ostentatious amount of time to do 120 questions. Like it might just be freaking almost impossible. But when you're on your second run through, it's definitely doable. I mean, there's days where I'd sit down and crank through over 200 questions on my next run through because you're just that much more confident.
Okay.